So welcome everyone to our Fireside chat where the mystical meets the practical. And today is April Fool's Day, and we thought what a great day to talk about the power of the Fool. It's an old archetype that has a lot of power, a lot of wisdom, a lot of crazy foolishness, and we're here to open up the conversation about what you know, what we know about the Fool, and especially the power of it. Sometimes we get kind of scared of it. It's so unpredictable, but when that energy comes in, what can it actually create? So that's what we wanted to open up, and maybe we can even start with you guys, or what a story from you. Do you want to?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, Sabina has a good story. So
yeah, well, for me, the Fool for a long time was is a companion. And what I love about the power of the Fool is the story where the Fool begins his or her journey, and in the beginning walks over clouds because they just simply don't know that they can't. And then at the end of the story, the Fool walks over clouds because she knows that she can. And in between that story, lots happens. Right?
That's the Fool's journey.
Sometimes they fall off the roof, even though the wall is a couple of inches right behind, all that kind of stuff. And I mean, when I look in my life, I have been called foolish many, many, many times. Moving to Scotland without really speaking much English, leaving everything behind and moving to Canada, and quitting a really good job recently that made us a lot of money, and endless stories. So it's a very powerful medicine or archetype, whatever you want to call it. And we just thought, what better day than today to celebrate that? Right?
And it's also when we take ourselves so seriously. I don't know about you guys, but man, that's one of my things. It's just taking myself and taking life so seriously. I got to figure it out, gotta make it happen. And the energy of the Fool is that little shyster that pulls the rug from out of under you. And you know, it's when you want to look your absolute best and you spend like an hour on your hair, and then you look like crap because it's all full of gel and hairspray and nothing goes the way that you want it. That's the energy of the Fool. It comes in when you're, you know, taking yourself too seriously and going for perfection. Mm-hmm. Can you guys relate to that? Times of your life?
No. Oh yeah.
And I mean, another energy is kind of like the teenager, like that foolishness that we were. I don't know about you, but I certainly was as a teenager. I mean, I was pregnant at 17. I just got into all kinds of trouble and did these foolhardy things that I like, thank God I had angels around me or whatever to save me from myself. So it's that kind of energy that can be scary when you look back and think, oh my goodness, how did I survive? But we did. And what did we learn from those times of being so foolhardy?
Mm-hmm. I'm actually very, very curious what you guys have to tell. Like, do you guys have a good Fool story where you thought you would make a fool of yourself, but it actually worked out really well?
That's a good question. Yeah. Can you say that again?
So, who has a good story where you made a fool of yourself, or you thought you would make a fool of yourself, where you thought it's foolish, and really dove into that adventure of the unknown without the security? Yeah. Whoever is.
Yeah. Go Dee.
Oh, sorry. I just want to say quickly that every time I teach, I think I'm going to make a fool of myself.
Oh, true.
Right. Yeah.
And you know what? At 9.999 times, it turns out amazing. So, yes.
That's a great example.
To share that.
Super. How about you, Dee?
The other
or
D.
Whoever is on the phone.
There were two Ds.
Oh, yeah. Okay. The other, Tom and Dee.
No, but there was somebody on the phone as well. Oh, whoever speaks first.
Shout out.
Okay, it's Tom and Dee. We were working together at Sauble Beach, cutting down very large cedar trees that were growing between a house and a garage. So there wasn't much room to drop these trees down, and we had to really concentrate so that we weren't destroying anything. In the middle of all this concentration, a woman came storming up the road in her dressing gown, and she was actually pumping her arms. She was so angry. She was so annoyed. She was just exuding all kinds of hate towards us.
Rage.
And I looked at her and I said, yes. And she said, have you any idea how noisy this is at this time of the morning? And I just smiled at her and said, yes. That's why we waited until 8 o'clock instead of 7.
You interrupted her beauty sleep.
She huffed away.
Okay, nice. Who else? There's somebody on the phone, I think. It's a 519, so possibly Ontario.
Hi, Darlene's here.
Oh, hi, Darlene.
Hi. Yeah, I guess the teaching example is the most. It makes me think of two things. One is that I think of, I make mostly safe choices, but in the teaching context is a good point of reference. So just being out there teaching dance or teaching children, that sometimes that's what it takes, is to just kind of go with what comes to mind when things feel like they're not working.
Mm-hmm.
And just get a little bit outrageous and then just watch the energy change. So lots of examples with working with young children is just, there's behavior stuff going on, or this, that, or the other. And then just to be silly and sing a silly song, or to talk in a silly voice, or to get up and start dancing around like a clown, and it gets their attention. And then it takes me out of my zone as well too, and seeing all the problems and shifts everything.
Beautiful example. Thank you for that. That is also, I'm going to actually run with that and pin our video. Like when you look historically with what the Fool was able to do, it was the only person in a kingdom that was able to see what doesn't work. Everybody, lots of people did that, but he was, or she was, the only person who could actually confront the king or the queen without getting killed, right? They had that right to be the fool, to point out what doesn't work and then be foolish, like what you said, Darlene, singing a silly song or doing something that shifts the energy.
Or even like in that case, like kind of the making fun of, like up to, right, to a point. The fool was the only one, the jester was the only one who could kind of make a fool of the king or the queen and get away with it. And yet, like pointing out the folly of, say, the government, right? Mm-hmm. So they're also very wise in what they could change.
Mm-hmm. And we were diving into the power of the Fool, since we have thought, hey, let's do April Fool's Day, right? Celebrate it properly. And it's amazing how many gems we found that are in this society made bad or like changed slightly, so that we don't tap into the power of the Fool, because the Fool is really one of the guardians of our superpowers, right? Our capacity to change something, to be different, to not fit in with the norm. Without the willingness to be foolish or look foolish or be the fool, you can't really get there, right? Does that make sense? So
yeah, it's interesting listening to what you talked about with the your moves and such. That when we think of the funny, the fool, but then that's another way of interpreting foolish.
Mm-hmm. And how in our society we have turned it into something bad, because what the Fool doesn't have is any kind of reverence for any structure that does not work. Right? So any status quo that is outdated, that doesn't work, that doesn't serve the greater, right? Whatever that is for the Fool. But that energy takes that apart. And I always was wondering why people were so terrified of clowns. I could never understand that. It's like that deep, deep fear of clowns, and seeing that element of being out of control. Like, you cannot control somebody because they will not take responsibility. They just hide behind their mask, right? It is something so scary to us because it is an element that we cannot calculate, we cannot predict or anything. It is that free radical that floats through our reality, that sometimes hits us over the head or lifts us into great heights. We don't know, right?
And just thinking of like little children, like in the story of the emperor and the new clothes, it's the little child that goes and points at the king and says, or the emperor, you have no clothes, he has no clothes. And that's like, we have to become like a little child again. And they are just full of wonder and curiosity. And us adults, we know better, we should know better. So it's just becoming like a child and seeing the world through a child's eyes, to be able to access that again as an adult, and get away from that seriousness that we tend to get into pretty easily.
And what really surprised me when I went exploring further and deeper in a way that I haven't done before, there is an energy of caring that goes beyond what most of us are willing to be. Okay, perceive that energy of the Fool who is willing to take anything apart that does not contribute to whatever they have chosen as their target or their greater good, or whatever you want to call it. And they're willing to take that apart. They're even willing to lose everything, destroy the whole system for that greater good. I don't know any other term to name that. There is a caring in that is so incredible and deep. And that is something that when we facilitate, see a lot, that people are scared of how much they actually care. So perceive that energy of the Fool, the willingness to do anything that would create more. And then what is part of that is a caring for whatever you actually really care for, to allow that to guide you. Can you perceive that energy?
And it almost kind of takes away your fear. Like, it makes you fearless.
No fear.
Yeah.
And that's why you can walk over clouds.
Yeah.
Right? Any comments, wonderings, and ponderings? This is a fireside chat. We are good entertainers. We love entertaining you guys. But I'm also really curious if there are any questions, any stories, anything that brings this forth in you.
Any kind of new awareness of the Fool that you hadn't really thought of before this little bit of a conversation.
One thing that comes to mind, Darlene, from a movie I saw a couple nights ago, was just sometimes in this context, it was like a street person, a person living in the streets who, was perceived as being, crazy kind of thing, out of their mind. But in the context, in the situation that happened, they were the ones that kind of spoke randomly and sounded lost, but they were the ones that had the pearl of wisdom that, was required in that moment, in their ramblings.
Exactly.
So you never know.
And how much do we all eliminate that out of our life because we're trying to get it right, we're trying to look good.
Yeah, we don't want to be that crazy person, right? We don't want to be seen as that, or rambling or mumbling to ourselves, but maybe that's the perfect thing.
And I'm also wondering, how much are you willing to be that? It's almost like a warrior energy, but without going to war or fighting, but doing that, what the warrior does on the front line from within, with that same fierceness. There's a rawness to that. And that, again, is something that we have made very wrong in our society. Right? I mean, I'm happy to see that more and more people like you guys are stepping up and are willing to be more of you. But how much more can you be you and that rawness and the willingness to be seen as different?
Just want to say something that you reminded me of. I used to teach a music and movement class to adults with disabilities, and it was super fun, and we would just really go nuts in the gym where we were doing our music and movement and all kinds of games and singing and sticking our tongues out and sounds and everything. And I remember the caseworkers came in and they gave me shit for it because people were sticking out their tongues, and they were trying to always get the people to put their tongues back in their mouths, and I was being this crazy person teaching them to go ah, and that the caring that I actually had, it took me beyond the fear of losing that job. Right? I didn't even consider that. I was in the moment with the people having a blast, and then I got like caught in that moment. But I realized, wow, the caring that was in that foolhardiness of mine, of what the establishment would see as foolhardy. So that's cool.
So how would it be for you guys to play more with that energy? Are you aware of an area where you're not trying to be the fool and be all serious and get it right? Never, right?
It's only me, right?
Yeah, it's only us trying to set up a business and doing it right, trying to eat right, trying to exercise right. What else is there? Get the money situation right. Not spend too much, because it would be foolish to spend everything and then you don't have anything. It's like,
It's pretty heavy and serious.
Right? So what are the areas where you're not willing to be foolish?
Just shout it out. Unmute yourself and shout it out.
I think one a place where it's not that easy, because it's also somewhat delicate, is calling a spade a spade. When you're working with other people, or even together having a conversation with other people.
Yeah.
And, owning what I'm aware of, and gently enough, but also clearly enough, putting it out.
So this is an interesting energy. I laughed today quite a bit for seeing all the April Fool's things going on in social media, and seeing how people react differently to that energy of the fool. Some need to correct, others totally buy it headline and sinker.
Hook, line,
and sinker. What did I say?
Headline.
Oh, headline and sinker. Yeah, headline and sinker too. And others just play with it and riff off on it, right? So what would it be like, Herna, if you allowed yourself to have that energy of the fool and not have to call a spade, but make the spade visible without it being named? Does that make sense?
Well, that is interesting. Yep.
Yeah. And it's an art that you can have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Like, when just what comes to mind is a story in Daughters of Copper Woman, and Bancroft, I think.
Not Bancroft, something else. It's on Amazon.
Yeah, really good storybook about a woman collecting Native American stories from her grandmother, who is a storyteller. And one of them is the clowns, and how the role of the clown in society. And what they used to do is they would spend a day with somebody who was off, like doing something stupid or struggling on whatever, and they either were just really mirroring them and just making it more obvious what they're actually doing without actually saying you're wrong, but just really caringly playing with them, like overdoing the whatever they're doing, or really just showing them that they cared, right? Because that is the origin of the Fool, is like recognizing there is a spade, and the spade doesn't really work here, but most of the time it's actually not kind to say, hey, you have a spade right in your face.
Right.
That's
like that confronting, that's not the Fool. The Fool goes around a back way, or pulls the rug out, or does just, it kind of distracts and gets the point across, but not in a direct way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, cool.
Does that help? Yeah, I see. Not good. And how much do you have innately actually a talent that got kind of muted out by the correctness?
Oh no.
Not that I can relate with, right? Juna loves decorating stories, and every time she does, I just go, ah.
That's what a story is all about, right?
But that's the power of the Fool, right? She doesn't care if that really happened or not.
I don't care about the details of the story, just if it's a good story.
Right? And how much more fun can that be? Not like being so super serious. So what else does this trigger in you, percolate for you?
I have a session in which people are confronting themselves and having to talk to themselves as their own best friend while looking into a mirror.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the mirror. And of course, that can be intimidating if you start off by looking in the mirror at yourself. So I came up with this idea. So this is a mask, and they are talking to a friend of theirs. So they start off getting the feel of what is required without the spade in their face. And then the second part of it is, see if you can handle talking to yourself.
Taking the mask off.
Cool.
Nice. Nice. Anybody else?
The Fool has showed up. Oh, yeah, go ahead. The other D.
Sorry. No, I just wanted to share that I think Sabine had said, like, where do we lack the ability of being the Fool or something like that. Yeah. But last September, I chose to take on a part-time job as an admin in a naturopath's office. And there really is very little space there to be the Fool, because everything is very structured. Everything is so not me. So it's a really good experience for me to kind of live the way the other half lives. But I do want to say that's probably an area of who I am right now where I can't really be the Fool. It's just, I almost want to say not allowed, only because of the fact, like, the people there are there for their health reasons, and they don't need me sitting behind the counter being the Fool. But so yeah, I would just say it appears that like when I'm there the 2 days a week that I'm there, I do have to hold back a little bit. So that's just something I wanted to share.
That's thank you for that.
Shaking your finger, so go ahead.
Just got an idea. Something's coming.
So, considering that 7% of our communication goes through words, and maybe a little bit more through like the obvious behavior, how would it be if you energetically put the Fool's hat on, like Tom has?
Okay, I can do that.
Right, and have fun with that. And it's like, really, on the outer, you're just sweet and innocent.
Yep, I can do that. Candy coated.
Exactly. And just like, and that's what, like, this morning I meditated with that energy, and this awareness came that how powerful we actually are when we allow ourselves to be that energy. Like you being in that office with the willingness to be the fool.
Yes.
And it's not the fool for the fool's sake. It's the fool as a contribution with the caring, not the aggressive fool and that pokes holes at everything. That's dumb.
Right.
It doesn't really create more. But the fool out of that joy and that caring.
Right.
And
Careful part.
exactly. And we have so much magic as in changing things without reason and justification in us that we don't allow ourselves to tap into, in the fear of, oh, I really can't afford it, this is not good, and blah, 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 all of that.
Right. Well, it's a great choice. Thank you. I'll play with that tomorrow.
Yeah.
And let us know what happens.
And it's
all right.
It's funny that you talk about, it's about health, and health is serious. Like, I was thinking of the movie Patch Adams, an old movie about bringing that lightheartedness into people who are suffering, and, cracking a joke or just a smile, or having, some goofy things on the counter that people can kind of question, it's throwing a little curveball into their day that makes them think something different. Or
No, I like that.
So many different ways.
Just kind of go with the flow, or feel the energy of how much you can contribute.
Yeah.
No, I like that. Thanks, ladies.
And really perceive also the power that you actually have.
Okay.
Like if you think you have to speak your truth or outwardly call the spade a spade,
Right.
you're limiting yourself in your capacity to really create more and create with what's like all the other parts in us that don't need words, that don't need behavior, that are just by purely being so powerful and potent that you change whole universes by just being that.
No, that's awesome. You guys have really helped me change the perception of a fool.
Yes.
So yeah, thank you. That's awesome.
Cool.
Yay. Oops.
That's awesome.
Anybody else?
I would just like to pipe in for a change, since I usually sit quiet.
Right.
The moment you brought up the whole energy of the fool, the resistance in me is incredible. So I can say that probably, there isn't an aspect of life where it isn't applicable. But then when you make the move to, and I'm currently working in a refinery, so much different, Dee, than the healthcare that you're in, but holy seriousness. Like, it's just, it's serious stuff. And I love that idea of having that hat on and going in there and just shifting things without people really knowing it. I mean, I think I do it to a really small extent right now, but this could just, wow, how powerful could that be? Thank you for that.
Yes.
Beautiful.
And let us know how it works. I'm so curious. And that is really why we do this work, that you guys really can see how amazingly powerful you actually are. Right?
I think we forget. Absolutely. Or the fool, or we play the fool.
and only one dimensionally, like we play that, like we think we're just being a fool, and and not the wise fool.
And it's interesting when you forget the greatness of you,
right?
That's when the clown has tears, right?
Well, and the connotation to fool is just so negative when you bring it up. There's so much negativity and wrongness around it that this is just this is a breath of fresh air to think of it in the different aspects. So
right, and also it has so much wrongness within a status quo system, right?
Yeah,
because the fool will change the status quo if it doesn't fit, and one thing that is always the same is change, right?
Right.
If something doesn't change, it will die.
And the fool is here to remind us that things change, and it instigates change, and status quo never wants change, right? They'll do anything to keep everything the same. So it's a huge threat. So of course the fool is foolish, foolhardy, stupid, a jerk, you know,
Mhm.
thoughtless.
And we blame the fool for things that, like, hey, you don't really care, and yada, 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 all that stuff. But they don't care for the individual and the detail and all that. They care for the bigger picture.
The fool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you say a little bit more about that?
We
bigger
did.
picture?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
did in the beginning.
Okay.
Do you have that do you get the sense for the bigger picture and the fool really caring for the bigger picture, not like whether somebody's feelings gets hurt or not, and they do even care for that.
I do. I'm starting to get a sense of it. The more you speak, and it's funny because as you're going along, I'm thinking, oh, that would be so much fun, and then you say, well, what fun could that be? And then I think, oh, well, you could be so powerful. Moments later, you say that it would be so powerful. I'm starting to feel the energy coming through, but it's really unique. Like it's not something that I've considered before.
Yeah.
So,
Mm-hmm.
thanks, Julian.
Welcome.
Yeah. Yay to the power of the fool.
Right.
Yeah, and
Thanks,
it's a power, right? It's a power, and society doesn't want us to know that it's a power.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And there's not a society that sits there and looks like God and says, you should not be powerful, or you shouldn't be the fool, or that's bad. It's just the nature of the beast when people live together, right? And when you look in the times when we were living in caves, that was necessary. But have you checked your living situations right now? Is there a what do you call it?
Saber-toothed tiger.
Saber-toothed tiger outside running down the street, and you can lock your door, right? You have a cushy life, even when you live on the street that is not as safe, but it's totally different than in the beginning of days.
Well, it's interesting because, in my journey, I've spent so much. I've actually acknowledged that I spent decades being a righteous bitch, right? So just decades of it. And so kind of trying to come out of that, you still have this desire to be right or to be in the right path. And it's that fear of judgment in a lot of cases that just keeps us doing what we do so that we'll fit in or be invited to the gathering, whatever it might be. So resistance and judgment is what I'm really feeling this would depend on.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe this is just the next step for me.
Yeah, and when you feel that resistance and that judgment, the fear of the judgment, that's exactly where you need to go.
Which is actually what you did tonight. Like you said, I have so much resistance about it, but you're actually here. That's just acknowledge that. That's pretty amazing to come to you don't like, what are we going to do here? Like put you on the spot. Like you don't know what that is, but you are curious enough to come and go beyond your resistance, which is very cool.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else wants to play?
What I just realized is this being the fool a superpower that we have?
Yeah.
Yes.
It actually opens up all of our other superpowers. If you're not willing to be the fool.
Yeah.
It's like the amount that you can be your superpower is like this little boop, here's a little bit, boop, here's a little bit, or in emergency situations.
Mm-hmm.
But just for fun? No, because you might disturb the shit.
The holy sacred shit pile.
Yeah. And who wants to do that? Oh, cool. Anybody else? What's percolating with you guys with this?
Hi, it's Tom.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. This is bringing back the memories of Kokopelli, who is he's the fool of the Southwest Native people.
Yeah.
But he's also gets credit for inseminating young women and starting things, and then just sort of wandering off. And so that's that's pretty dangerous, being a fool. But take some credit here. And I'm thinking the raven plays the role of the trickster in Pacific Northwest tribes, and I'm pretty sure it's the Mastabio is the fool in Cree. They're in every
pan,
and they take responsibility for other things that happen in the community. And it wasn't me that got that girl pregnant. It was Kokopelli that got that girl. When you remember when he? Yes. Okay.
Right. He can get away with a lot.
I mean, when you look at it, that's right. It's like that is the creation of the bad. It's like the scapegoat. I mean, it's even called a goat, right? And how many of those figures have goat feet?
The satyrs. Fawns.
Yeah. And that is, you are disturbing the status quo, and that is not good for society.
I just figured it out. The Fonz was Henry Winkler. Oh. I'm muting myself now, thank you.
And who was the father of so-and-so? Maybe. And when you look at those symbols, right? Hern is like the Celtic god, the ones with the horns. He's also somebody who's very fertile, but the life-bringing energy of being willing to be that energy is enormous, unstoppable, right? And are you willing to just be such a strong symbol of being totally, fully alive? Right? What if you gave birth to yourself all the time, right? Reinvented yourself and really were willing to, give birth to yourself and your own reality, not holding on to anything. And that can be foolish, right? Like I've several times in my life have left everything behind, and not because I split up from a relationship, but because I could, right? It was time to move on. It's like it created a community in Germany. It was going well, and it was time for me to move on. Right? That's dumb, moving to somewhere where you have no connections, nothing. You don't even have a work visa, can't work for 1 or 2 years. It's like, why would you do that? Because I can.
Like the story that you said at the beginning.
Yeah.
Like the story that you said at the beginning about the fool.
Yeah. And also the willingness to be the fool in the beginning of the journey of just of falling and being willing to learn, which is one of our biggest superpowers, our capacity to actually learn. Right? Without taking it too seriously.
Yeah, I mean, and for me, like I said, I was pregnant at 17, and that was, you could say that was stupid, and I thought, man, that was really stupid of me, but boy, did I learn. Did I ever grow up fast? Did I ever go through, like, the dark night of the soul and really come out the other side stronger? And, could I have done that without that particular situation? Probably not. So.
And look at your kids now.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah. But I didn't know that at the time. I just thought I made a stupid mistake.
Yeah.
Anyone else have something? You have?
I do. I'm just thinking in terms of parenting, that how much fun I used to be when I had younger kids. And, that foolish, that playful was so alive. And then when my kids are 20 and 22, and there's so much seriousness and worry and struggle and all that, one conversation can have me saying that, I'm just so depleted. I've lost my sense of humor when I'm around them, but I, find it when I'm with other people in other places. But the other possibility is that, rather than thinking that I'm too depleted to have my sense of humor, that to bring the clown, the fool, more light and playful back into the relationship will energize me.
Mm-hmm.
And waiting for energy to do that, just holding it that way, that maybe if I'm more playful and that get back to the fool or some daring things, that I will be more energized.
That is awesome. I love it. And even for you, just if you started, if you had a conversation with your kid and you just start dancing around, dancing out the room and then dancing back in, what would that create?
Yeah, well, yeah. I'd like to predict, my answer is with one child it would be this way and the other child it would be that way. And then the other answer could be, who cares what the reaction is, right? It's just if it's okay for me, then, maybe it helped me through the conversation.
Exactly.
Do you want the super tool of a fool? What do you know what?
Sorry, say that again?
Do you want to know what the super tool of a fool is?
Super tool, the fool, yes.
It's a spritz bottle with water.
Oh, yeah? That was a super tool for my cat.
No, do it with your kids. It throws them off.
I love that. That is brilliant.
In Findhorn, there was this guy, when a meeting got too serious, he spritzed people right in the face, not with but with a mister. It changed the whole situation.
Wow.
Right? I mean, water is very cleansing. It clears the air. And it is so unexpected for people when you pull that and just go psh, psh, psh. That is like, whoa, they fall out of their attachments. So I highly recommend that.
Okay.
Whipped cream in a thing
well, even better.
Those spray whipped cream cans.
Yeah.
But don't be too close when you do it.
Yeah, right.
You want to be a calculated fool. No, you don't want to be a calculated fool. Just do it.
Uh-huh.
Great. Thank you, Darlene. That was awesome.
Yeah, fun. Anybody else playing with the fool?
When I was 49, I did my teenage years.
Yeah.
That was not funny. My kids did not think it was funny. But you know what? It was obviously something I had to go through to learn.
Yeah.
So.
Right.
Whenever those teen years happen, hey? Could be any time.
Yeah. Well, I never had my teens. I went right from my parents' house to being married and living with my husband. So I never did do the things teenagers usually do. So I decided to do it at 49 after my husband died. My kids were not impressed.
So why did you stop?
Why did I stop? Well, because it was time.
It was what?
I think it was time to grow up.
Oh, that's sad.
No way. I know. But
so would you be,
sorry.
Would you be willing to have a second coming?
I'm thinking about that. Yeah. I because I've been burnt a couple of times doing that, and so it makes you a little bit cautious. Like about how you perceive people. Can they handle this or not? And maybe you shouldn't do that. Maybe you should just go ahead and spritz them.
Don't be concerned for others. Be aware of the greater picture.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Right. And again, this is not about you putting on a red nose, even though that can help, and spritzing water and doing dances and stuff like that. It begins with being willing to be that energy and not taking yourself so serious and not taking your attachment so serious either. Right?
Yeah, I have a hard time with that.
Mm-hmm.
I take myself way too seriously.
And that's where you want to just look in that famous mirror and just give yourself a little bit of a smirk.
Yeah.
Right? And just really lighten up. And really, for me, it's also, we had a couple of situations in the recent past where we had people offering us great things. And it was foolish of us not to accept, right? Because
some people would see it as foolish that we didn't accept these great offerings.
Yeah, some of our friends were saying, "What? Are you crazy?" And yet, it just was not quite right. It had that energy in it.
Yeah, it didn't resonate for you.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, and that's where you have to listen and trust your inner knowing to be able to really unfold your magic. And that's also a real strong guide in the liminal, right? We are in these times of a liminal, and that keeps coming up. So in that time of in betwixt and in between, where nothing really works, the energy of the Fool really can get you through, because when you don't care for the status quo and outer structures, you have to really tune in with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or you're in a situation where there is no solution. Mm-hmm. What do? You have to just really tune in. And instead of going outward, you just, okay, what's actually here?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Claudia. Anybody else ready to play with the Fool?
Mm-hmm.
Who's that? Oh, just a good laugh.
So, I mean, my question to you guys, are you willing to raw with your caring and your willingness to bring forth life? Just like spring is roaring.
Raw and roaring.
Be raw with your roaring. And just like spring, like bursting forth. I guess that's a good time to have April Fool's Day, eh?
It is, and it's a good time for Kokopelli and all that stuff.
And that sexual energy. So, are you willing to be that energy of Kokopelli and all that? Darlene, I think it's you kind of bringing in background noise. If you can hit the mute button on your phone, that would be great.
Okay.
Perfect, thank you.
Is it *6?
Just hit mute. You have a
do you
mute
have a
button
mute
on your phone.
Or is it *6?
No, I don't know. No, that's
I want to offer one thing that we often that was said and grabbed my attention, was also that we had to stop clowning around because we had to grow up. And I guess that's the other sort of archetype, is there an equivalent between growing up and losing the playful and losing the clown, or the jester, the joker, everything that we're referring to is that's the that we grew up with is, okay, grow up now.
Yeah. I mean, that's almost like when you lose your innocence, right? You have to grow up.
Mm-hmm.
But we're all in a time of evolution, and most of us also age, where it's time to bring that energy back. Like walk over clouds because we know we can.
Yeah.
Right? And that's something we don't often get told. Right? We should, our bodies are starting to age, and we don't really know what our role is, and all that not so fun stuff. What if that we become the wise fools? Would that be fun?
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how much change that would bring to your kids.
Mm-hmm. I remember years ago being at less than 40, but being at someone's 40th birthday party, and that was the statement I remembered the most, that she said, "I'm so happy I'm turning 40 because now I know, I've learned that now I don't have to give a shit anymore."
Exactly.
I don't care what anybody else thinks, and I can just do what I want.
Mm-hmm.
Nice flipping on its head, the idea of, getting older and wiser, but the wise can mean the fool.
Yeah. And thank you for that. And I'm sure you don't mean it that way, but again, it is not caring.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It is more caring than ever, the willingness to be so deeply intimate and touched that you see the bigger picture and really care for it.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't care for people's pimples on their asses.
And don't care what other, not as much, but about being judged, just really being authentic.
That's what I mean. It's like you don't sweat the small stuff anymore.
Yeah.
Like you're willing to play in a different way. And I do believe that the planet and our society currently extremely needs that energy of not buying everything. And that was something else that I played with, is when you're not willing to be the fool and you're so eager to get it right or avoid the wrongness, you kind of have to buy everything at face value, right? If you're not willing to look beyond what appears to be so,
that life is serious and you have to work hard and toe the line.
And you have to call what's wrong, and you can't just say, hey, I snipped my finger and therefore it changes, right? We don't allow ourselves that power. But if we as individuals would allow ourselves the awareness that with the energy that we be, like what we taught with, who was it, with the office D? Yeah, D. And in the somebody else said something. Anyway, in those situations where you don't think you can be the fool, what if we can be the fool for the planet? And those energies of like global warming and all that, that's pretty heavy duty stuff. What if you would allow yourself the magic, would be foolish enough to be aware of how much impact you can actually have if you live that energy and live the joy of embodiment, like that freeness that really, yeah, joy is our natural state of being and transforms so much, right? And how much joy can you set free with the Fool in that energy and change the whole planet? Is that an idea?
Old.
Yeah, exactly. Foolish, right? And then perceive the energy of Kokopelli, Pan, and I don't know, you mentioned a couple of others, but perceive that they are unstoppable. You can't control them. They're out of control.
And that's what we love about them. Like we want to read stories about them, but I mean, we don't want to be it. It's like, but you know, because they get a whole bunch of women pregnant. Oh my goodness, that's you know, who wants to live with that, right? So
I'm okay with it.
we get really, what I was, when you were talking, I was like thinking we get so strategic as adults. We get strategic, we get controlling and over controlling, and a lot of it, like with the Fool can really let go of having the need for control, the need to, the ability to free fall and to leap without knowing if there's a net, just leaping for the sake of leaping. And it's not all thought through. And a lot of us were in this conversation, it's how much of us have been strategic to try to figure out how we're going to even be the Fool. Like how are we going to be the Fool at work? Like what does that mean to energetically be the Fool? And just like, if we can like really loosen up, however you need to do that, is just loosen up. And that joy is a huge part of the Fool.
Right? I just, when you were talking, I thought, you know, the Fool is also that moment when you drop out of your thinking into your knowing. Because your knowing is not justifiable. Your thinking is always justifiable in one way or another. But when you allow yourself to really just know without having any justifications or reasons for knowing, that's when you're starting to be the Fool. Right? So again, are you willing to roar, rawly, foolishly? You need to say that stuff. Roar. I just need to say it fast. Perceive that energy. Can you feel that in your body? How would your body feel? And how much would the earth love that if you would be willing to just burst forth like spring in that energy of being alive and totally, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyone else? Is that a yes, by the way?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, Kim.
I'm going to add a quick comment because while you were talking about all these, Dee was talking about her job and all that. And as you know, I work in totally not a serious career at all. Actually, probably one of the most boring series is my day career, not my business, but, working in the legal field. And what I realize is when I am willing to be the fool, so to speak, with people at work, it's a contribution to them. Like I was talking to one of the, for lack of a better word, managing partners today, and he called me about a new legal file. And I said, why are you calling me? I'm trying to update my Facebook status. And there was dead silence on the phone. And it's like, oh, okay. And then you see how that can trickle out and get people to just get their head, myself included, because I love to have my head up my butt a lot, especially because I work in this very serious field. And when you don't do that, and when you kind of shift it, and I didn't think of it as being the fool, but just as, sometimes my job drives me nuts, so I'm willing to be a little bit silly. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I'm willing to be a lot silly. Mm-hmm. So what if everybody doing that in their individual circumstances, even, I love how, Dee of Tom and Dee said, cutting down trees. And she's like, well, we waited till 8 o'clock. And hey, anybody in Sawville Beach who's not up at 8 o'clock, what's wrong with them?
Yeah.
As a former Sawvilleite.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just that. Just what if we could bring that into everything we do? Because like I'll bring that into my coaching clients, and if I can bring that into my legal career as well, where you can bring it into everything.
So what if you brought it to Kim?
Is that not doing okay? Say more. Like I'm thinking that I am doing that because it's fun for me to be a bit silly sometimes.
But really
when it's
bring it to your own reality. Really fill yourself with the Fool.
Oh, I gotta go now. Okay. Wow, thank you.
Right? How easy it is. Oh yeah, I'll bring it here. I'll do it there. But what if you just did it for you?
Oh, that's very different.
Mm-hmm. Like, what if you allowed yourself the caring that the Fool has for yourself? To care enough to let go of all things that don't work anymore, to just really care enough to question, not doubt, but question.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
That which you're holding on to that doesn't serve you anymore.
Thank you. Yeah. Something to definitely play with and ask questions. Mm-hmm. And just to tap into.
And allow yourself, all of you, to receive from that energy. Like there is an energy present that represents that. You don't have to come up with it yourself. Just allow that to come forth in you. It's not a doing, right? Because then you again trying to get it right. Just allow it to just bubble up in you. Channel the Fool.
Yeah. And when we're not the Fool, we don't give ourselves permission to be the Fool. We treat ourselves and others with silk gloves. Like, should I say a joke in this context? Or, can I let it rip? It's like that silk gloves. Take the silk gloves off and just like be you. Right? In the work situation or anywhere with yourself. Mm-hmm. The fire's getting hot here.
I know. So is this helpful for you guys? Did you get some gems? Is there something that you can play with? Any more questions?
That was awesome. Thanks, ladies.
Thank you.
And everyone else online too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we're so grateful for all your contributions. Like we all are changing the world through this, our energy coming together. So we're so grateful. We can't do this with Fireside Chats, wouldn't exist without you guys. So you really are important to us and to each other. So thank you so much for being here tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yay.
Thank you. Being the Fool.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Let us know.
It really helped my little fool here to become more foolish.
Woo, hey.
I was setting up more pranks.
Ooh. And never give up the Fool.
Never.
Never.
Ever.
Thanks, girls.
Thanks, girls.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
They call us girls. Oh, I love it.